Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, I bought another Montero for $500, and the previous owner says it has a snap timing belt, but I don't think it does. And so the question is, can we save this $500 Montero? So before I get this pulled in the garage, let me show you around it real quick. It's a 2003 limited edition, so it's the 20th anniversary, just like my white one. It's got the matching wheels, the interior is the 20th anniversary, so that's really cool. And it's in pretty good shape. I'll do a full tour of this later, but right now, all the problems are underneath the hood. So the previous owner says that he thinks that this timing belt is snapped. He took it to another shop. They diagnosed it as a snapped timing belt. I checked it out, and the timing belt appears to have tension. However, the previous owner also mentioned that it made a ton of noise one day, sounded like pistons hitting valves or something going wrong in the motor, and that's when he turned it off about a year ago and parked it. So that's what I know. I haven't got it to fire up yet, but I'm gonna put a fresh battery in it. I'm gonna drag it into the garage and see if we can't figure out what's going on with this thing. So the first thing I did is check out the timing belt. The previous owner said the timing belt was snapped. Now that was told to him by a mechanic. And so I pulled off this inspection cover, and sure enough, there is tension on this belt. So I rotated the motor over earlier to top dead center as far as these cams go. And I pulled this inspection cover off, and I made sure that they were still aligned. One of the things that the previous owner said is that it was making a clackety sound, like pistons and rods flying around. And so I wanted to make sure that it hadn't skipped a bunch of teeth on the timing. So I couldn't look down here at the crank, but I was able to line up these two cams, and they're looking good. So with that, I'm confident enough that this might be able to fire up. And if it fires up and it makes horrible sounds, then I'll know that it's toast and I don't want to rebuild it. But if it doesn't, this thing might be savable. So I've pulled the Montero into the garage, and the good news is I actually got it running. Now, I did not get it running well, and it sounds a little weird. So what I did is I pulled it in, made sure that I had a fresh charge on the battery, and I fired it up. But in order to do that, I had to feather the gas back and forth, and it took a lot of tries before it wanted to start. Now, it hasn't been run in a year and a half, and so maybe it's got bad gas. I'm not really sure, but either way, I did get it to fire up, and after giving it a little bit of revving, I actually got it to idle as well. Idling. I mean, it's not good. Something is definitely pissed, but I mean, it's like drivable right now, I think. So here's me inside the car. Turn it on, 190,000 miles. And if I just crank it right now, no foot on the gas or anything, you can hear it fires up. Now, it's idling around 1100 RPM. A little high, no check engine lights. I've got a scanner plugged in. I'm not pulling any codes. However, I think the check engine light is burnt out, so we need to figure that out. So now let's go under the hood and let's see if I can figure out what's going on with this thing. All right, honestly, it's running really good. I'm pretty stoked about this, but it's got a little bit of a shake to it. Now, I lost audio here, but what I was saying is it sounds like it's got a misfire. So I'm going to go through the process of removing different spark plug boots to see if I can figure out which cylinder has the misfire. Pull the spark plug boot off, and it's running worse. So that's cylinder number 1. Cylinder number 3. Yep, running worse. Cylinder number 6 or 5, running worse. And then this one's a little difficult because it's worse for 2 of them, but if I unplug these coils, I should be able to figure out what's going on. Okay, so that's coil number 6. It actually smoothed out quite a bit. Interesting. So there's 6. There's 4. Oh, 4, it wants to die. So if you unplug that one, it wants to die. This one didn't change much. Oh, number 1 over here. Same thing. Okay. So it seems like this one might be the hot ticket. If I unplug that, it actually doesn't affect that much. So this affects number 6 and number 3 over here. But if I unplug this one, it starts to run worse. So I wonder if I have a problem with number 6 either way, I think the right move is to pull this intake, look at the spark plugs, and see what compression's looking like. But I think that's the start, is getting in here. But guys, look, this car is running. For 500 bucks, it's running. So let's get in here and let's figure out what's going on with it. All right, I am over the moon right now. I can't believe this thing is running. It fired up. Something is wrong with it. I'm not 100% sure. It seems like it's got a dead miss, but like I said, it's not coming up on the scanner. So I'm going to take the intake off, and there's a few reasons why. One, I can investigate the spark plugs to figure out if one of the cylinders is running rich or lean, and that'll help me figure out misfire issues or just the health of the motor. The other thing I can do to figure out the health of the motor is a compression test. That'll let me know, do I have bad rings, valves, and what else has happened on the side that would make all the combustion possible. If the timing is off, I might be able to detect that through a compression test, but either way, I think that's my best diagnosis step. So I'm gonna pull this intake off and start figuring this out. Okay, we have our culprit, a classic for the Montero. It appears that this butterfly valve is missing, as well as this one is completely missing. You can see the actuator here. If you close it, all of them, this one's completely gone, not a screw in sight. These ones all look pretty good. I'm gonna guess this rod has, oh, actually, yeah, it's got quite a bit of play in it. But this one's gone and this one's gone. So now we need to come over here, find out where they've gone. Okay, so it's this cylinder right here, as well as this one right here. And as I look in there, I don't see anything. Maybe if I look over here. Oh, is that a, I think I see it wedged in there. I think that's my butterfly valve wedged right there. Is the other one wedged in here? I don't see a butterfly valve anywhere in this one. I'm gonna need to do some digging. Okay. Let's see what that guy is right there. Oh yeah, sure enough. Cylinder number 1 butterfly valve. Look at that. That's gnarly. So this was in cylinder number 1 right there. Where's the other half of it? Honestly, probably inside of the motor. When I fired this thing up, it did make quite a bit of clacking sound. The guy who I bought this from said that it made some pretty terrible noises, and I think I know why. So here's the deal. I found half of this. I found 0 screws, but I didn't find anything in this one. Now, what's interesting about that is this runner does lead to the number 5 cylinder, and this is the one I had some suspicions about because when I disconnected the spark coil, the ignition coil, it didn't really affect it that much. So next step is to pull this off and see if I can get the spark plug out. Best case scenario, the spark plug's been damaged and a replaced spark plug would fix it. Worst case scenario, this has done considerable damage to the engine and it's gonna need either a rebore or some major work, which I probably won't get into. But what I'll do is I'll pull this out, I'll check the spark plug, and then I'll do a compression test, and that'll be able to show me at least the health of it right now. And then I'll run a borescope down there to see if I can see how the cylinder wall is looking or the top of the piston. Wow, look at this, guys. I don't think this is sparking. Look at that. The ground strap has been totally smashed into the electrode. There's no way that was sparking, and if it was, not very consistently. Also, it's covered in oil because these valve covers leak. So I'm not particularly concerned about that. So when I pulled it out, all the oil went down into it. But check that out. Okay, so this is a really good sign because that could be the misfire, not necessarily bad compression. So what I'm gonna do is, because I'm in here, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the rest of the spark plugs just to see what they're looking like. And like I said, I'm gonna do a compression test and I'm gonna borescope specifically that cylinder and number 1, because those are the ones that lost the butterfly valves. There's really no reason to believe that the other ones would be bad, but I might, just because I'm in there, borescope them anyways. But that's actually really encouraging because, guys, this might need new spark plugs and a rebuilt manifold, and it'd be good to go. So I'm gonna pull out those other spark plugs and see what they're looking like. Okay, I pulled the rest of the spark plugs, and interestingly enough, number 1 actually looks okay. There's like no signs of damage. It even looks like the mixture is pretty good. So this one didn't have nearly the impact that the other ones had. Now it's time to do a compression test and see where the numbers are. Fingers crossed they all come out good, because that means we are a set of spark plugs away from making this thing run. Sweet, go ahead and crank until I yell stop. Stop. All right, so that's at like 140.
How is that compared to spec?
We'll see. Crank it again. Stop. Okay, that's it. 145. Stop. 155. Stop. 160. Stop. 160 again. Stop. That's at 150. All right, now this is pretty hard to see on the borescope. I got a new one, it's a little better. But you can see right here in the corner of the right side of the screen, it looks like there's a little bit of vertical scoring. And that would indicate to me that this piston is moving back and forth and rubbing up against the wall. That's a guess, and it's really hard to tell in here because you just can't quite get the angle right. You just can't quite see it. It could just be oil, but that to me looks like horizontal scarring, and that could have oblonged or ovalized the cylinder, and that would make it slap back and forth. Unfortunately, I can't get a good view of orientation. I'm not 100% sure if I'm looking at the side, if I'm looking at the top or the bottom, so I got to figure that out. But I want to show you guys, this is the closest I've got to being able to see anything that would actually tell me, hey, this has got piston slap or some kind of issue in the cylinder. And that would happen because as the piston's going up and down, if anything jammed in there, like a butterfly valve or a screw or whatever, it would cock the piston and cause it to drag as it goes up and down. And if that goes on for long enough, it creates slop either way. And as the piston travels up and down, it'll kind of do something like this where the skirt slaps against the side. A little bit of this is usually okay as the car heats up. However, if it still exists when the car heats up, or if it gets worse over time, that means that's just getting worse and worse. It's wearing away, and eventually that will have to be taken care of. For reference, here is a piston that I pulled out of a motor that also ate a butterfly valve. And as you can see, there's definitely some damage on the top of the piston. However, it's actually not that significant. None of it was deformed, and it was actually running okay, I'm assuming, because there's no marks on this side that would indicate that it's been sliding up and down. There's normal wear marks in the cylinder, but that's it. It just hit on this top edge, and you can even see it hit a little bit over here, but the ring lands are okay. Obviously, this one's dirty, but that's what that damage looks like outside of the motor. So I'm actually not too worried about this, and I think it's going to be all right. So as you can see with the borescope, this cylinder wall does look like it has maybe a little bit of damage. The wall actually looks okay, but the top of the piston has definitely taken a hit. It's mostly just greasy, but I've seen them run with worse. So that's at 140, and some of the better ones are at 160. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy, but I bet it'll run. So I've got a new spark plug. I'm just going to throw the one new spark plug in here, see how it works. I'm going to put everything back together and see if I can get this thing to fire up and idle smooth. All right, so here's my current plan. I've changed the bad spark plug. This one, obviously not sparking. I think that's my misfire. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna try to run this as is. I'm not gonna change anything else. I actually only changed the one spark plug. And the reason is, if this isn't gonna work, if this is gonna blow up, I don't wanna spend any more money than I have to. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to run it just like it is right now. And if it works well, I'll go in and I'll change out the butterfly valves, and I'll change out the spark plugs, I'll do the gaskets, I'll even probably do a timing belt on it because this is gonna be a good car. But right now I just wanna see if it's gonna run. Just like that, the intake manifold is reassembled, spark plug is in. Let's see if this thing will fire up and idle smooth. All right, first test drive out in the Montero, and it's running. It's running, it's idling, it's holding. Coolant temperature, like it seems like it's doing pretty well. So here's what I'm on the lookout for. I'm looking for two things. One, the biggest one I'm looking for is rod knock. With there being a butterfly valve stuck up inside of the piston as it was going up and down, it's possible that that shock load has transferred down into the crank and that something's unhappy. The only way to know is to drive it and see if it develops. So that's obviously a sound I'm listening for. I'm listening for all sorts of weird sounds, making sure that the motor seems healthy. The other thing is I made sure to check the oil level. So almost all Monteros of this age will burn oil. What I'm looking for is excessive oil burning, and that would be from scarring in the piston walls. So if the piston walls are scarred, there's gonna leak a little bit of oil down into the combustion chamber, and then when it leaks down into there, or rather leaks up, it's gonna burn. And if it burns a lot, then this motor is gonna need to be honed and re-ringed, and it's gonna be no good. So my plan is to just drive this thing like crazy, like drive it like I stole it, give it all the beans, because if it's gonna break, I want it to break now, right? I just wanna punish it. I wanna see if it's gonna hold up, but if it holds up well, this is gonna be a good car. So I'm gonna continue on this test drive, give it everything it's got. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it holds together. I'll tell you guys what, if you haven't driven your car like it owes you money in a little bit, you should really do it. It's a good time. Just hammer it on this thing. All right, emerging on the highway. Foot flat to the floor. Hasn't let go yet. All right, a potentially interesting development. I let the car idle for about 10 minutes, came back. These two lights are on, no other check engine lights, no other issues it seems. I'm gonna turn the car off and see if those go away. Might have a check engine light, might have an issue, might be nothing, not sure. So the car's back together and it's running pretty good. It's been running for a while. However, it is making a sound that sounds, it's kind of a knock, it's kind of a tick. See if you can hear it when I fire this thing up. All right, so it's been about 500 miles since I put this together, and so far it's running okay. So I'm gonna jump in here and I'm gonna undo all the work I did. I'm gonna redo the spark plugs, change up some intake manifold gaskets, as well as replace those two valves that dropped into the motor. While I'm in there, I'm also gonna boroscope again, see how the cylinder walls are looking, and I'm gonna run another compression test to see if those numbers have changed. Guys, this is wild. I have no idea how to explain what I'm about to show you guys. So I'm in here and I got it tore down to here and I'm investigating this. And like I mentioned earlier, I was hearing a ticking noise. And so I was wondering, where is that coming from? What could that possibly be? And I was worried about it. And so I'm just looking down in these cylinders to kind of see what's going on, see if I see anything. And then I look into here and I don't know if you can see that. The other half of the butterfly valve. I can't even get it out of there right now. It's wedged in there. I have to figure out how to get it out. I have literally no idea where that came from. When I took this apart before, I went through this whole thing. I looked for it. There was nothing on either of these. And now, for some reason, it's in the motor. I have no idea what to say about that. But either way, that's got to be my noise, and I've got to get that out of there. Okay, I don't even know what to make of this anymore. Look at this. There's my other butterfly valve. Where are these coming from? This was not in here when I took this apart before. What the heck? I gotta get it out of there. Okay, so at this point, I have found a complete butterfly valve. The whole thing is here. It's obviously been munched, but the whole thing is here. This is out of cylinder number 1. Out of cylinder number 6, I have only found this half. So I've got to find out where the other half is. My only thought is it's either in the intake or in the cylinder head. So I'm going to pull this apart and see if I can't figure out where the heck this thing is gone. I can't believe that I'm still finding chunks in there. Now I got to figure it out, but that explains my noise. So I'm going to jump into this. Oh, there you go. All right, this is what I found inside the intake manifold. Not only did I find a full screw, but look at all these little chunks. These have got to be other parts of the butterfly valve. They've got crunched up, must be either in the valves or most likely in the cylinder and then spat back up. And here's what happened is they were stuck inside of all this oily residue inside of this chamber. So this is number 6. And that's the one that was having the issues. And actually, as I look into this, there's some grit to this. So what I think is happening is somehow, some way, it's pushing the rejected metal that's been smashed up by the pistons back up into here. It's getting wedged in here. And so what must have happened is I must have had the rest of the butterfly valves in here. And it dropped in when I put the manifold back on. I tried to find, I looked through here. I tried to shine a light into here and see, and I couldn't see anything. So it's kind of surprising me. But what I've got right now is a combination of butterfly valves. I've got this one. This came out of cylinder number 1, and this looks to be a pretty complete valve, as you can see. A little bent up, whatever. Then I've got this one. This one came out of cylinder number 6. And this, I'm guessing, is the rest of that. I can't be 100% sure. It looks like these are small enough pieces that they could actually get consumed by the motor and then pushed through. I looked high and low. I cannot find the rest of this butterfly valve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this manifold and I'm just going to chuck it. There's too much crap in here and whatever. I've got another one that I can use. So I'm going to use that one instead. And I'm going to do that mix and match thing I was talking about and make one good intake manifold. Now, fortunately for me, I have another intake manifold. I picked up another intake manifold when I scrapped another 2003 Mitsubishi Montero that had a blown motor. So I'm going to take parts from that and I'm going to combine them with the parts I already have to make one good manifold. All right, so I've got red Loctite in there, and I'm going to put this butterfly valve in. It's got the M48 facing up, just like the other ones. So just get those holes lined up. I'm going to make sure the screws are nice and clean as I can get them. Just to be safe, a little more Loctite on that. Red, of course, because I never, ever, ever want these to come out. One partially threaded in. One down. This one to go. All right, now I've got all of these butterfly valves back in here. And I actually went through and I tested all these screws and made sure they were still tight. In my experience, these 4 in the middle tend to stay tight. So what I did is I tried to tighten them, and if they moved, I would have taken them out, put Loctite on them, and put them back in. But none of them moved either direction. I made sure they were tight. These ones you saw me put in, and I put Loctite on them as well. So that's as good as it's going to get for keeping those in there. Okay, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this O-ring back here. As you can see, there's some play in this rod, and there's some bushings that go with this. The bushings, they tend to help. You can get them from different cars, like a Hyundai. I'm going to just see if I can replace that O-ring and get some of this slop to stop. This will cause an intake leak, and it'll cause it to run lean. And so I think that's an issue I'm having. So I'm going to have to take out that screw. I already pulled off the 10 millimeter nut and the actuating lever right here. I have to back this screw out, pull that out, and then I have to get a punch in. There's a little spot here where I got to punch something out so I can get this plastic part out, and then underneath that is the O-ring. So here's a shot of that roller pin that I've got to punch out. You got to be really careful with it. You got to punch that out the other side of this in order to remove this to get to the O-ring underneath. All right, and after quite a bit of struggle, I finally did get this out. And as you can see, there's supposed to be an O-ring right there where it slides into this throttle body or into this manifold. But there isn't. It's worn out. So that's the reason for the shaking. And so now I got to go to my set of O-rings and see if I can find one that'll fit this to hopefully seal that up. That's definitely going to cause an intake leak or a vacuum leak. And it's also going to add to the vibration in this rod, which could cause these screws to come loose. So I want to get that fixed up. I'll get an O-ring on here, slap this back together, and then hopefully put it back together and not drop another butterfly valve into the intake. All right, so I got a new O-ring in here, and as you can see, way less slop. So that'll hopefully be sealed. I might have to pressure test it afterwards or smoke test it afterwards, but that's looking way better. I just use a Harbor Freight kit here. Let's see if I can find the actual size. This guy right here seemed to fit. It needed a little bit of coercing to get it in there, but now it's good, and the butterfly valves actuate just fine. So that should solve my leaky intake problem. All right, I've got the two halves of the manifold reassembled, fresh gaskets in there. This thing is ready to go back in the car. So let's get this dropped in and get this thing fired up. So I've got the car fired back up, and unfortunately, it's still making that sound. It sounds like it's a little better, but it still sounds roughly the same. So I'm not 100% sure what's causing that. I mean, obviously I got all the crap out. It's possible there's still some stuff stuck in cylinder number 6 that I wasn't able to catch or get out that it's gonna pass through. But I guess there's nothing left to do but to drive it and see what happens. So I'm back to putting miles on this thing. Fingers crossed it holds together and it ends up being okay. Okay, so after a little bit of research on the internet, I think that I have piston slap in cylinder number 6. That's the one with the damage. That's the one with the lowest compression, although not very low. It seems like it's actually going to be fine. That one's 145 at my current elevation. The highest one is 155. They're pretty much all the same. So I think I have a little bit of piston slap there. Will it be a big deal? Will it go away with time? I'm not 100% sure. Will changing the oil help? Not 100% sure either. So what I did to figure that out is I actually disconnected the spark plug leads just like I did before, and I found that the noise, the ticking noise, went away when I disabled that cylinder. And so this is pretty normal on different motors. It is not typical of the Mitsubishi Montero. I'm not 100% sure on the history of this motor, so that could have been something that just existed the whole time. It could have been damage from the butterfly valves. Either way, the only way to know is to run it and see if it gets worse or better or if it causes any real issues. So I'm just gonna keep driving this thing. I'm gonna put about 1,000 miles on it and see if I can get it to do one thing or the other. Either way, I think I've got the intake manifold sorted. All the gaskets are good. All that is sealed up, new spark plugs. That should be good to go. So the only thing left to do is just to drive it and see if it falls apart. So here I am driving the Montero, and it sounds great. I've put almost 3,000 miles on this thing since I got it. I did an oil change on it. I am running a little heavier weight oil just to see how that'll go, but it seems to be doing really good. It drives smooth, it idles smooth. I haven't had almost any issues with it. I've been towing with it too. I've done 2 300-mile tow trips with it where I'm towing at least 2,000 pounds. One time I was towing 4,000 pounds, and it seems to be doing just fine. So I'm not worried about this. It might have a little bit of piston slap, like I said earlier. However, the sign that piston slap is not a huge concern, at least from what I can tell, is if it goes away when it warms up. And this one, it becomes almost silent, if not completely silent and normal, once it gets just a little bit of heat in the motor. So those rings, they're expanding, and chances are good that as it wears in, it's actually gonna get better. Those rings are gonna conform to that cylinder a little bit better, because as I've been driving it, it just sounds better and better as we go. So that's great news. With it running smooth, lots of miles underneath my belt, I'm feeling confident that this is a good car. And so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pass this one on to somebody else. I think as long as I disclose what's been going on with it, this is gonna be a great car for somebody. It's a really nice spec. It looks really good right now. It's driving great. And so I'm excited to have this one back on the road. For me, this is another example of if you know what you're doing with a Montero, they can be great. Now, if you don't know what you're doing with a Montero, there's a lot of chances that another shop would look at this and say, no way, that car's done, don't put it back on the road, you need a full motor rebuild, and then you're looking at a couple grand to get this thing back on the road, when really all it needed was a butterfly valve, someone to do some fishing around in the intake, and take good care of it. And so this just makes me glad that I can come in and I can buy Monteros for cheap, and then I can fix them up, get them back on the road, and keep more of these things in people's hands so that they can go on adventures and explore and enjoy this rig. So funny enough, I'm actually selling this car back to the original owner. When I got it all finished up, I've been talking with him back and forth, trying to get the scoop on how this car ran before, and he was really interested in keeping it. And so when he sold it to me, he said, hey, let me know when you get it done, I'm interested. And so I hit him up, wanted to give him first right of refusal, and sure enough, in about 30 minutes, he's coming here to pick this thing up. So there you go, everybody. I was able to get this $500 Montero back on the road, and it's in good hands with the previous owner, and he is really excited about having this back and getting out and adventures in it. While I had the car, I did go ahead and do a lot of other maintenance items. I changed out the rear shocks, I changed out the headlights, I did do a timing belt and water pump, as well as a brake accumulator, and lots of other little bits to make sure this Montero is running as good as it possibly can. So thanks for joining me in this journey. Hopefully I'll be able to pick up lots of other cheap Monteros, restore them, and get them back on the road soon. All right, guys, before we end the video, I want to say thank you so much for watching and supporting me in my channel, and I want to let you guys know about something special I'm doing for you guys if you've stuck around and watched the video. You'll notice I'm wearing a shirt of the Montero, which is parked behind me, and I've made a couple of these, and if you're interested in buying one, I'm going to be selling them. I've only got like 30 of them, so if you're interested, let me know. I'll leave an email down below where you can send me an email. We can work out PayPal, and I'll ship them out to you. I'm going to be selling them for 30 bucks a pop, so if you want to help out the channel, support content like this, I just want to say thanks for being a part of it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.